and I'm going to, so this meeting is being recorded so that we can take proper notes. And I'm going to, Ilana,
Good morning.
who's head of Peace Direct here in the US, is going to welcome us all. Ilana, over to you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Wonderful. I want to really just thank our host for pulling this together, and so thank you all for your patience. I think that it's so worth it for the little hiccups that we have to be able to hear from more people. So we don't mind at all. And I hope you also don't mind. So hello and welcome to everyone, wherever you're calling from around the world. We're excited that you're all able to join us in this important conversation. My name is Ilana Aquino. I'm the US Executive Director of Peace Direct, based in Washington, DC. I first want to thank our friends from the Movement for Community-Led Development for their efforts to co-host this vital discussion. I also want to thank Sarah Rose and other USAID colleagues for your continued willingness to engage with us all here, and for taking the time to be present to build on the first conversation from earlier this year and to continue to learn and improve the localization efforts. First, we'll hear from Sarah Rose and the USAID team on their recently released Localization Progress Report, which I am told is being translated as we speak into multiple languages for more inclusive engagement. We'll then open up for a quick Q&A period with them. Next, we'll move into breakout room discussions to continue to meaningfully interrogate the indicators that make up the 50% metric. After carefully considering the 14 indicators, Peace Direct and MCLD have selected 4 for discussion today. The first, guided by the rubric of shifting power and resources, will look at 2 indicators: the award, that the award is co-designed with local partners, and that local subawards make up greater than 50% of the budget under an assistance award with an international prime partner. Do not worry, you will hear that again. And then following that, give me one second to catch up where I was. Yes, under the principle of collaboration and not extraction, we will further examine 2 indicators for a total of 4. And these 2 will be that award budgets reflect efforts to ensure full cost recovery in direct awards to local partners, regardless of instrument, and that the activity uses demand-driven capacity strengthening approaches aligned with USAID's local capacity strengthening policy. A mouthful, but very important. We will share more information and directions on how to join the breakout groups later on in the session, and I look forward to hearing and learning from you all. At this point, I don't know if it will be appropriate, John, to turn over to Pascal to also welcome.
Yes, please, Pascal.
Merci. Oui. Merci d'être venu à cet important dialogue que nous organisons. Oui. Bon, je m'appelle Pascal Diorros, mais la présentation introductive. Mais la présentation introductive a été faite par Ilana Aquino. Voilà. Mais ce qui a été présenté, c'est qu'au cours de ce dialogue que nous avons, c'est de voir un peu le rapport qui a été le rapport qui a été déjà introduit, et je vous souhaite réellement la bienvenue tous francophones pour que nous puissions échanger en tant que le rôle de MCLD et de Peace Direct
And
Bon,
perhaps
nous avons organisé une session pour les organisations communautaires et les bâtisseurs de la paix locaux afin qu'ils donnent leur avis sur la liste des...
So Pascal, we're having a little trouble
la
with
liste
your
des meilleures pratiques qui a généré d'importants inputs. Et l'accord qui a été donné par rapport était suffisamment prometteur. Donc, nous sommes ici à ce rendez-vous, continuer les dialogues. Et avoir un peu vos actions, vos interactions sur les indicateurs qui sont issus, les 14 indicateurs qui sont issus de ce dialogue. Bon, je fais le résumé ainsi et je vais retourner donner la parole à nouveau à Elena.
Thank you, Pascal. And let me just remind French and Spanish speakers, there is interpretation for this call. And if everyone could please mute if you are not speaking. So we really are getting a lot of feedback. A lot of people have their mics open, so please mute. And then let me pass it to Sarah Rose, yes? Okay. Pin.
Yes, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. It's really nice to see all of you. This is a great group this morning. I can see we have over 100 folks in the room today. My name is Sarah Rose. I'm a senior advisor for localization at USAID. And I am just really grateful for the opportunity to meet with all of you today. Let me just start by thanking the Movement for Community-Led Development and Peace Direct for bringing us all together today. John, Alana, Vahe, Sarah, and Gunjan. Gunjan, I know, is unable to join us today, but I really appreciate your partnership. Pascal, thank you so much for your remarks to kick us off today. I agree completely about the importance of being able to have this opportunity to talk to community-based organizations about this important topic. And of course, I really just want to thank all of you for sharing your time today. Having these opportunities to connect with you all is so valuable to USAID. Let me note that I am joined today by several colleagues from USAID. I think we have around 10 to 12 USAID staff on the call today here to listen. But let me introduce 4 of them. We have Colleen Brady. She's the Senior Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning Specialist in USAID's Department for Development, Democracy, and Innovation. And she led the analysis that informed the development of the new indicator that we're going to be talking a lot about today. Let me introduce Kate Scaife-Diaz, who is a localization advisor in USAID's Bureau for Policy Planning and Learning, and Jacob Gray, who is a program cycle specialist in the same bureau. And together, Kate and Jacob are really leading the efforts to pilot and implement this indicator. And finally, I'd like to introduce Matt Johnson. Matt is USAID's industry liaison and the head of communications in USAID's Office of Acquisitions and Assistance. And these 4 folks will also be participating in the question and answer portion of our conversation today. So thanks very much to you all for joining as well. So let me just take a couple of minutes to provide some background and some context for the conversation that we're going to have over the next hour and 15 minutes or so today. And let me just quickly note that you will have received an email from John Coonrad either last night or this morning that shared the slides in advance. So I am presenting the English version today. And I want to very much thank the interpreters for interpreting my remarks as we go. But the version of the slides that John shared contains versions of these slides in French and in Spanish. So if you can find that email from John, and if you click on that document, if you scroll down past the English version, you will find the French version. And then after that,
Actually, Sarah, we broke them and
oh,
sent
you broke
people
them
there.
apart. Okay, never mind then. Thank you very much, John. I appreciate your additional help. So in that case, forget those instructions, but I hope you're able to follow along on the slides that are in a language that is more accessible for you. So just as a bit of background in terms of setting the scene for where we are today, back in November of 2021, now almost a year and a half ago, the head of USAID, Administrator Samantha Power, gave a speech that outlined her priorities for her leadership at USAID. And one of her key commitments was that USAID's work should center more around local actors, should focus on strengthening local systems, and it should be more responsive to local priorities. And this commitment really recognizes the expertise of local actors and the importance of their ties to the communities that our work, as well as their work, hopes to serve. And it recognizes that progress is really going to come from these very communities themselves. Next slide, please, Colleen. So to deliver on that commitment, we have been working toward two agency-wide targets. One of these targets is to increase our funding directly to local entities. And we have a goal of channeling at least a quarter of our funding directly to local partners by the end of 2025. The second target is intended to push us to better elevate local voices, with a goal that at least half of our programs will create space for local actors to exercise leadership and decision-making power over the priorities, over project design, over implementation, and over how we define and measure results in USAID programming. Next slide, please. So Ilana mentioned this, but I'll just underscore it here, is that just last month, we released our first localization progress report, which looks at our progress towards these two goals. And again, if you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to check it out. Again, I'm sorry for now, it's available only in English. We're hoping to change that, but there are a lot of graphs as well, too, that hopefully make it a little bit more accessible. And I'll thank my colleague, Tom, who I believe dropped the link to the report also in the chat if it's easier to click on it. Next slide, please. So let me quickly highlight one of the top line findings from this report, and this relates to our direct local funding goal. So in 2022, last year, USAID recorded the highest level and percent of funding going directly to local actors in over a decade. And this has been following what has been a generally increasing trend over the previous 4 years. So right now, we're currently at just over 10% of our funding going directly to local partners, compared to our agency-wide target of 25%. So we do have a way to go, but I also want to highlight that just in the last year, direct local funding increased by $623 million, and that's a 66% year-on-year increase in dollar value terms, in terms of the funds that are going directly to local partners. So I hope you will check out the report. It contains a lot more details by region, by country, and by sector. But if we can go to the next slide, please. But the focus of our conversation today is really on this other angle too, and this is about local leadership and local voice. And so what the progress report does is it outlines how we're going to track progress towards this second goal of elevating local. Measuring where our funding is going, has been relatively straightforward, at least as a concept, right? But what we didn't have was an existing way to measure local leadership, nor did we have an obvious data source. So we asked, and we asked a lot of people, including you all. So back in January, we met with a group that was organized by MCLD and Peace Direct, and many of you participated in that call, I'm sure, to hear from you. And what we wanted to hear was the following. What are the ways that USAID can work that meaningfully and visibly create space for local leadership and decision-making over USAID programming? And how can we measure these efforts, both to create incentives for the uptake of some of these good practices, but also to hold ourselves to account for achieving our commitments? So those of you who participated in this conversation, you may remember that we started with an initial list that USAID had come up with, that we had brainstormed, of around 30 good practices, right, that could possibly create space for local leadership. And then we asked you, which of these do you think are high priority for us to track, which are lower priority, and what is missing from the list? So this next slide, please, Kylie. So this conversation that we had with you all was part of a broader set of consultations that we had between November of 2022 and March of 2023. During this time period, we actually engaged over 300 organizations including community-based organizations, as well as partner organizations that are based in the countries where we work, as well as US-based partners. And we also, of course, talk to our staff, right, including staff in 22 of our missions or country offices. And so now at this point, we are just really pleased to be able to reflect back with you on this process. And we want to really share how we analyzed all the feedback that we got. We want to share where we ended up. And then, of course, more importantly, we want to hear from you all about, how you want to see some of these selected good practices implemented. And so I'm actually really looking forward to the breakout sessions that are planned for today. We right now are in the process of setting definitions and creating guidance for each of these good practices. And so your input into this process will be very valuable, and it is very timely. So thank you very much. So let me take just a minute to describe the analysis process that we used. We took the notes and the feedback that we received from all of the consultations, and we entered them all into a qualitative coding program. And so based on all of this, we developed a preliminary code book that we tested in the first week of coding, and then we refined it and updated it based on what we learned. And so after some testing and some piloting to make sure that we had a common understanding of all the content and the codes that the analysis team was using, we started coding everything that we heard. And we eventually applied nearly 2,000 codes to the documents and the notes that we took during conversations, as well as the feedback that we received, including surveys. So over half of the feedback that we got was related to the proposed specific actions, this list of 30 good practices. About a third of the feedback that we got focused on other specific actions that USAID hadn't included in its initial list. And then the rest of the feedback was either very specific to how the indicator would be defined and structured, or it was more broad, related to USAID's localization approaches, sort of more broadly. So after that, we were able to dive into an analysis to really understand what types of specific actions were most valued, which were less valued, and by whom. And so from this analysis, what we were able to do was distill several key takeaways, which ultimately informed the development of the indicator. And so what the analysis showed was a very strong demand for early and inclusive engagement with communities, for shifting power to local communities through direct partnerships with USAID, as well as a deep appreciation for asset-based approaches that recognize and strengthen and leverage the expertise that exists in local communities. Next slide, please. So we evaluated, again, all of these responses, and we came up with a framework that focuses on 4 categories of approaches through which USAID can enable greater local leadership in its activities. So these categories look at, first, the number of activities with a direct award with a local partner. This complements the dollar value that we're tracking with the other indicator that I mentioned earlier. The second category really looks at how we partner with local partners. So direct funding relationships can be structured in ways that can create more or less space for local leadership. And so this category really looks at how we co-design, how we co-create, how we encourage partner designed activities in ways that can elevate local decision-making. The third category really looks at how we can invest in strengthening local capacity and in leveraging and elevating, again, these existing capacities that exist in communities, as well as the local knowledge and expertise. And then the fourth category really looks at how can we engage communities directly? How can we expand the use of inclusive and participatory approaches throughout our programs, including direct engagement of USAID staff with partners and communities as well. So under each of these 4 practices are several, under each of these categories, are several good practices that USAID, or its implementing partners could use throughout, priority setting, design, implementation, or monitoring and evaluation processes. I won't talk about all of them, but you're welcome to peruse them. And I know we're going to focus, do a deep dive on 4 of them later on today. In terms of operationalizing this indicator, we are going to report on how many of our projects use each of these practices in a given fiscal year. And in addition, we also will be using, this set of tracking to think about how we can report progress towards our target that at least half of our programs will be locally led. And we will look for projects that list at least 2 good practices in at least 2 of the 4 categories. But that is to say that not all of the practices that are identified in this list are going to be relevant for all programs, all award types, all operating contexts. It's more like a menu of options to choose from that could be relevant. So let me just pause now, and I want to make sure we have a lot of time for discussion, but I actually really wanted to reflect and revisit on what we heard from this group, from MCLD and Peace Direct communities. And I want to talk a little bit about how your insights mapped to where we ended up on this. So first, I want to note that this group was very, very helpful in pointing out what we were missing from our initial list of good practices that USAID had brainstormed. You helped us articulate other specific actions that we should include. And you frequently highlighted the importance of things like inclusion, as a cross-cutting lens for how to approach some of these practices and as a practice in and of itself. And also what we heard from you loud and clear was about the importance of capacity strengthening. And you talked about it in two ways, right? You talked about capacity strengthening in terms of strengthening organizations' capacity to deliver on their own missions according to their own self-identified priorities for capacity strengthening. And this type of capacity strengthening is very much aligned with a policy that USAID has. We have a new local capacity strengthening policy. But you also emphasize the importance of strengthening organizational capacity to receive donor funds and to work directly with USAID. And this latter element wasn't actually part of our initial list, but we ended up adopting it as one of the final practices that we are tracking under that third category. You also spoke extensively about the importance of flexibility in both implementation as well as management, with an emphasis on thinking about how to cultivate equitable partnerships. So we heard this and we recognize that the type of award is just one part of flexibly approaching partnerships. And so we created a new practice under this sort of creating effective local partnerships category, the second category, that speaks to this, looking for awards that would be descriptive of desired outcomes, but not prescriptive of activities, which allows partners the space to think about how they could propose, implement, or adapt locally generated solutions. So of the specific actions on our list, those that this group spoke about most frequently, both positively and negatively across our conversations were, again, capacity strengthening, co-creation, co-design with local communities, local sub-awards or sub-grants, ensuring full cost recovery for awards to local organizations, and having solicitations in local languages. So it's fitting that several of these actions are actually the focus of our conversation later on today. And let me give you a quick snapshot of, again, what we heard from you in the past on these specific points. So co-design and co-creation. This is one thing that we're going to be talking about in more detail later on. But you all discuss these as very closely linked as well as cross-cutting. You emphasize the importance of collaborating closely with both local partners as well as the local communities that they serve. We're also going to focus on cost recovery. And you indicated to us that cost recovery for local partners is essential, both in terms of meeting the requirements of the award, as well as for sustainability and for long-term development. When you talked to us about sub-awards the last time, this came up frequently, but not always positively. Actually, from this group, we heard more frequently an emphasis on the importance of avoiding intermediaries and working directly with USAID where possible. And then the final piece was about capacity strengthening that we're going to talk about, and thinking in particular about the importance of recognizing existing local capacities. And that is something that has emerged loud and clear, I think, both in our policy, but as well as in this, this set of practices that we're seeking to track. So this is all to say, I've talked too much, but we are really looking forward to more conversation on each of these pieces today. And as I mentioned before, this conversation is just really timely. Again, right now, teams are working to establish definitions and guidance that are related to these practices. And so this will really help inform that process. I also want to highlight that this year is going to be a learning year for us. I think we should expect some adaptation in process and potentially in the practices that we are tracking over time. Right, this indicator is modular. It has multiple component parts. And so we can update the practices that it tracks over the years, both as our knowledge and practice of locally led development evolves, and as we hear more from local partners and local communities about your priorities as well. So let me also just reiterate to close that this is not put forth as an exhaustive list of things that can move the needle on locally led development, on equitable engagement, on trust-based partnerships. That is too much to ask of any indicator, right? Advancing locally led development is about so much more than indicators. you all know this, you all live and breathe it every day. Things like having an open door and creating space for proactive conversations with local partners and local actors matters. Structuring listening tours to be inclusive matters, right? Doing co-creation in ways that are sensitive to the time and resources that groups put into these processes, that matters too. Locally led development is about applying principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility to our work. And it's also about listening too. So with that, I'm done talking. And my colleagues and I are really, really looking forward to listening to you all today. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a wonderful presentation. And I do note very heartwarmingly how important it was, our first convening, as it seemed to have really had an impact on the results that you all have been putting together. So it's really good to know that this collaboration with local leaders is really working. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to for question and answer. So if you please indicate that you have a question by raising your virtual hand. I think that will be the easiest way for me to see you. And we also have a colleague who will be.
I assume that we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
Okay, I think some can and some
we
can't.
we can hear you.
We hear you, so I don't know.
Okay, I will try to speak more clearly as well. There will be a colleague also manning the chat. So if you prefer to put your comment in the chat, your question in the chat, we will have a look at that as well. All right.
We can't hear you, please.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we can hear you. So I think it's very important that everybody who's not Elena, please stay muted. And then I think everyone will be able to hear her because her sound is working fine. So please be muted until it's, she calls on you. Thank you.
Darajay, my apologies. Maybe you want to try to get out and come back in. It might be isolated to your computer. I will turn it over to Chris for the first question. Chris Owala.
Thanks Hello, facilitator, we can't hear you.
Thanks a lot for this.
Yes.
Can I proceed?
Yes, please.
Thanks for this engagement on local-led development, which is a very good concept. It's a concept that meant that community are our own experts, they understand their issues, should be the driving seat. But I wanted just to give an example on, I've been participating on a USAID-led, on a community-led processes in the so-called LDOs. And many a times, the intent is never achieved because you intend to localize to make the community lead the process, but again, you give it to other middlemen, which make it very cumbersome for the actual or the real beneficiaries benefit from this grant. So the process end up creating another complex process, end up creating more barriers and more gatekeepers. And I can give you a case study whereby the consultant that were leading into this process end up forming a consortia and they will end up getting this money. So it's the working a process that they want to take and manage. So in the real process, you get a fund for which is supposed to go to the direct beneficiaries, and now these people are not benefiting. You end up benefiting middlemen who end up cut off people from this process, and now it's a counterproductive exercise. So I wanted to think that if the USAID meant well, you build capacity of local organizations, they form networks, then you give them money directly, as opposed to giving middlemen who again make business and they make the whole objective is lost in the air. So to me, that's what I can submit for now. But I think it's a good initiative, but the implementation, it was not going to deliver on the very valid and honest objective that was set. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for that very valid question. It's occurring to me, maybe let's take 3 at once so we can get to more questions. Meshach, if I'm saying that properly, over to you.
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Allô?
Merci beaucoup pour l'exposé de Madame Sarah. Je suis Meshach de la RDC. Nous louons beaucoup la détermination de USAID pour la localisation. Et je dis aussi merci à Peace Direct parce que je suis ami à une organisation appuyée financièrement par Peace Direct. Vraiment, ce que Peace Direct fait, ça prouve la détermination d'appuyer réellement la localisation. Et ma question est de savoir, par rapport à la RDC, qui est un pays avec plusieurs provinces, grands pays, quelles sont les zones prioritaires pour USAID? Est-ce que USAID prend toutes les zones? Est-ce qu'il y a des provinces prioritaires? Et est-ce qu'il sera possible à ce que USAID puisse nous rapprocher, nous, en tant que réseau, parce que je suis le point focal pour la charte pour le changement en RDC, et on milite pour ce processus de la localisation. Est-ce possible que USAID puisse nous rapprocher pour que nous puissions, par exemple, réfléchir ensemble, leur dire ce que nous avons déjà fait, là où nous sommes, et ce que nous préconisons faire, et voir à quel niveau USAID pourrait peut-être accepter certaines de nos propositions et rester toujours dans sa philosophie par rapport à son programme. Merci beaucoup.
Excellent. Thank you for that question. And we'll take one more before I turn it back over to the USAID team for this round. That will be Medju.
Allô?
Bonjour, merci beaucoup pour la présentation. Je suis Medju Mbachili de l'ONG Action Motive depuis Mopti Mali. Nous apprécions sa juste valeur l'approche de l'USAID que certains appellent ici la délocalisation des interventions. Et mes questions sont les suivantes. Il y a mon prédécesseur qui a pris en cours une de mes préoccupations, c'était les zones prioritaires au Mali, une d'intervention prioritaire au Mali, et ensuite voir s'il y a une plateforme créée par l'USAID pour que les organisations communautaires puissent accéder, puis s'informer s'il y a des appels à manifestation. Parce qu'actuellement, il y a des appels à manifestation, mais dans pas mal d'organisations, particulièrement mon organisation n'a pas accès aux informations. Ce sont mes questions. Merci.
On peut intervenir.
Wonderful. Okay, over to you, Sarah and the team.
Allô?
Okay, hello, bonjour.
Thank you so much for your questions. They are excellent questions. Chris, to respond to your point too, in thinking about, what scope is there to sort of reduce the use of intermediaries and work more directly with local organizations. And I will highlight that that really is one of the goals that we have as part of USAID. Again, we have a goal that 25% of our funding will go directly to local organizations within the next few years. And so I just wanted to reflect that, this is something that we heard from you in the past as well, but we also want to reflect that, we need to be able to create space for all types of partnerships as well. And there are some cases in which local organizations prefer to work through an intermediary for a number of reasons, either because of sort of the size and scope of working with USAID as well. But again, hear you loud and clear that, that more direct funding to local organizations is a shared goal of ours. I heard two questions about, priority regions within certain countries within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as Mali. One thing that I would highlight is that on our website, we have country strategies for each of our countries. We can find that link to that page with those country strategies and drop it in the chat here in just a moment. But you can look at each of those strategies to try to discover more about sort of what the priority sectors and the priority regions are as well. Medoun, thank you for your question about whether there is a platform where you can find more information about partnering with USAID. Let me actually turn over to my colleague, Matt Johnson, who can talk a little bit more about the work with USAID platform and the information that that contains as well. Matt, are you there?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So we have dropped the link into the chat box. But on that platform, there's a couple of, I think, really helpful tools that I would point you to. We have something called a partner directory where you can actually register your organization within our website. And so as we do like market research or we're doing different events and activities, we kind of know who you are and have your ability to reach out and contact you. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. We also have a really helpful tool called a pre-engagement assessment. And so if you're looking at like, what is your organization's capacity or even ability to maybe work with USAID, or what are some of the things that USAID is looking for? We have it's like a 15-minute assessment that you can take that'll give you like a report or score for your organization. But then one of the best things about it is that we give you a customized report just for your organization that allows you then to build your capacity. So many of you probably tried to register for a unique entity ID or UEI number, and that's a very cumbersome and burdensome process. If you haven't registered for that, we've got like step-by-step guides, infographics, all the tools and resources that you need for that. And so if you take the pre-engagement assessment, that's a really great way to learn a little bit more about your organization. We have a lot of other tools on there, such as like we've got a sub opportunities feed. I know Sarah talked a little bit about that earlier on, a place to kind of connect with different funding opportunities. We've also got like a start here checklist. And so right now, a lot of the resources are in English. We should be within the next month finalizing our like top 20 resources in French, Spanish, and Arabic. As well as we've got a lot of other tools in a number of other languages, but I would really encourage you to check out that platform because there's a host of tools and resources there.
Thank you. I believe that this is one of the most important sessions that we'll engage in this morning. So I will take 3 more questions.
May I ask one question?
Hello?
Hold on, if you can mute yourself. And then I will also read some questions from the chat. But this round, I would like to, gentlemen, indulge me. I would like to take questions from women. So if you are a gentleman at the moment, yes?
Hello.
Okay, so yes, if you're a gentleman, if you wouldn't mind putting your hands down, I only have time to take 3 more questions from the screen. And if those can be women. Pamela, I see you. Go ahead.
Hello? Hello. Okay, I'm Pamela. I represent the first organization who fights with the person living with albinism. I'm French speaker, but I want to advise you for another meeting to have the simultaneous interpretation in French. It's very important. There we will be dynamic. I will do the suggestion for your work or for all things you want to do. Okay, I will speak in French now. Ok, bonsoir à tout le monde. C'est un plaisir réellement de parler de tout ce que USAID fait et de Peace Direct, que je ne connais pas très bien. Et moi, je milite dans le cadre des personnes vulnérables, des personnes vivant avec l'albinisme, qui aussi se retrouvent dans nos communautés. Et donc, je suggère que USAID, surtout, pense quand même à nous aider ou à nous aider pour l'insertion des personnes atteintes d'albinisme qui réellement sont des personnes poursuivies et que vous savez bien. et qui pourront s'insérer dans nos communautés, toujours dans le but que nos communautés aillent de l'avant. Quant à ce que j'ai lu un peu ce que USAID a envoyé et par rapport à ce qu'ils font pour les communautés, pour l'émergence des communautés, je voudrais qu'il y ait plus de sensibilisation sur le terrain, que cela ne s'arrête pas au forum, au meeting et autres, que cela soit beaucoup plus concret et plus pragmatique. Avec le temps, nous aurons plus de suggestions à apporter. Je dis merci à tous ceux qui ont quand même présenté l'institution, qui ont parlé des indicateurs de USAID. Je pense que plus amplement, je vais plus m'imprégner et j'aurai quand même à apporter un plus avec le temps. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Pamela. Lema?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, John and everybody. I am Lema from Ethiopia Cancer Society from Ethiopia. You know, actually, I greatly invite and thank you for this invitation. And you know, our society is took USAID, LCD, or local capacity building project, and our society has gained a great capacity in that case. So now it is become an excellent center of you know, from that evaluation. It took us from 2017 to 2019. However, till now we couldn't find any fund from USAID. And this maybe, you know, we don't have any connection or ways of, you know, connect with USAID. We are very grateful to work with you. However, I wanted to give your advice how we can connect, how we have, you know, work together, because we have PhD doctors, I mean, medical doctors, we have also other doctors, we have very capacity, high capacity personnel. However, you know, we couldn't have the chance. So I kindly request you guys to connect our society and to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lema. Marie?
Oui, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Marie au Mali, Marie Diallo, et je suis vraiment très content de cette initiative-là engagée depuis fort longtemps pour une forte implication des communautés dans les processus en tout cas de développement ou que ce soit de la paix. Et j'avoue que cette initiative, elle est la bienvenue dans la mesure où ça met en place une approche d'intervention avec et non pour les communautés. Et ça encourage également le fait que les communautés elles-mêmes s'identifient aux actions entreprises par les intervenants et pour l'ensemble des parties prenantes. Mais j'ai une seule question. Je voudrais savoir, est-ce que pour cette initiative, est-ce qu'il y a eu une cartographie des organisations au niveau local qui sont censées être à mesure de bénéficier de ces financements en fonction de leur capacité de gestion transparente ou rationnelle? Est-ce qu'il y a eu une cartographie des organisations ciblées dans ce sens-là? Merci.
Okay, over to Sarah and team.
Thank you so much for your questions. Pamela, thank you for your questions about, or your comments, I should say, about language accessibility. This is so important. And actually, this really reflects something that we are working on as an agency broadly. Matt mentioned the effort that is ongoing right now to make sure we have key resources on this platform, workwithusaid.org, translated into a number of different languages. But another thing that we're doing too is trying to make sure that when we have funding processes or when we have funding opportunities, that you know, our missions, our country offices and the places that we work, we are expanding the use of local languages to make sure that those notices of funding or opportunities are available in languages that are more commonly spoken in the places that we work. We are trying to expand opportunities to engage in some of our funding processes in, again, languages that are more commonly spoken in the places that we work. This is a key sort of early fundamental step towards thinking about how we as a donor can be more accessible to the communities that we hope to serve as well. So thank you very much for those thoughts. And thank you also for the work that you do with disabled individuals as well. And I just was reflecting as you spoke, how closely tied together, USAID's localization efforts are with our efforts to, really promote inclusive development, which of course maintains that, every person in all of their diversity in a community has a role in advancing the development objectives of that community. And, really, if you think about, our localization goals, our goals to elevate local leadership, elevate local voices, elevate local decision-making, directly fund organizations, pursuing those goals in the absence of an inclusive lens, right, really risks sort of, exacerbating potential inequalities that may exist in a particular location as it is. And so you're highlighting the need to be inclusive of groups that may not be sort of at the forefront or that may have been historically marginalized is very important. And again, that is something that USAID is very much focused on in terms of our work as well. The questions on mapping local organizations, that's a great question. I'm going to turn back over to my colleague, Matt, in just a moment. One of the tools that our platform workwithusaid.org can do is it has a partner directory, which enables people to search for organizations that may be, working in a particular country or particular region in a particular sector, to be able to identify organizations with particular interests in particular areas. Many of our country offices, our missions, have also done sort of individual, country-based partner mapping too, to be able to understand, who are some of these organizations out there that maybe we haven't, that maybe USAID hasn't been familiarized with yet as well. We're also talking to other funders, foundation funders, other bilateral funders as well, to think more about how we can share some of our lists of partners with which we work as well, to make sure that we are expanding as much as we can, sort of this network that we have when we're seeking to work more with local actors. Matt, let me turn it over to you for the couple of questions about how to connect directly with USAID, as well as maybe some more detail on work with USAID and partner mapping.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It's a great question. I mean, I think, USAID, having so many offices in so many countries, it can sometimes feel like you're working with 100 different organizations. And so part of a couple of years ago, my team was set up called the Industry Liaison Team, really to serve as like a front door to USAID. So you don't have to guess who to go to, where to connect with. And so organizations, you can always reach out. I'm going to drop my team's email address in the chat box right now, industryliaison@usaid.gov. You can always reach out to our team. There's a couple of things that we do. We often meet one-on-one with organizations, kind of get a better understanding of kind of who you are, the work that you're doing, and then try and help make connections to your organization, to our mission or staff out in the field, as well as folks back in Washington, DC. So we do a lot of like the one-on-one consultations, as well as connecting with organizations overseas. I'm going to drop another blog. So I know dropping a lot of links into the chat box, but we have a blog I wrote about a year or so ago on just 7 ways to introduce yourself to USAID. It includes things like adding your name or organization into our partner directory, participating in different events, or finding specific funding opportunities. I personally find one of like the most helpful ways to connect to kind of what's happening to USAID is honestly, if you're on LinkedIn, joining our LinkedIn group. So, there's a lot of information in a lot of different places. And one of the things that my team tries to do specifically on social media is go through and like find everything that's happening every day and post it online for you to access and take a look at. So example, we go through all the different places that USAID funding opportunities are posted every day and kind of do like here's the new funding opportunities that are available to organizations to take a look at. And so all that to say is I think you can feel free to always connect with my team. It's industryliaison@usaid.gov, and we're happy to help answer questions, direct you to resources, help make some of those introductions so you don't have to feel like, you don't know who to talk to at USAID or where to go.
Thank you. Sarah, complete from your team? Okay, Good, good. Thank you for indulging me and allowing the questions to go on a little bit longer. I think it's such a rare and wonderful opportunity for our civil society leaders to be able to speak to the leaders pushing this charge forward within USAID. So thank you for indulging that. We'll now go into breakout rooms. They will be a little bit shorter. We'll do 15 minutes instead of 20. So keep your comments tight. Women, please don't be brave to speak up. Men, please make room so that women can also talk. And I'll now turn it over to Sarah of MCLD to guide us in how to move into the breakout rooms.
Thank you so much, Alana. We have a breakout room set up, 10 different groups. There are 6 English groups, 3 French groups, and 1 Spanish group. You'll be able to self-select your breakout room in the settings at the bottom of your screen. You'll click join next to the breakout room that you want to participate in, and then you'll have to confirm by clicking join again. And we have 4 different indicators selected for our discussion today. The first is the award is co-designed with local partners. Second is the award budgets reflect efforts to ensure full cost recovery in direct awards to local partners, regardless of instrument. Third is the activity uses demand-driven capacity strengthening approaches aligned with USAID's local capacity strengthening policy. And fourth, local subawards make up more than 50% of the budget under an assistance award with an international prime partner. So you'll be able to pick based on those 4 what you want to talk about today. And I'm going to open up the rooms and you'll just click join next to the room you wish to participate in. The rooms are open, and if you need help, I'll be here. So just let me know if you aren't able to choose your group yourself.
I'm not seeing any group. I don't know why.
You might need to navigate green. Next to the chat, it might say more, and then you'll see an option for breakout rooms, and then the list should come up. You'll need to scroll down a little bit. The last group is in Spanish, and then there's 3 in French.
Okay, are we all back into the main room, main session? Yes. Amazing. As people are rejoining.
Yes, this is Lemma.
Amazing. Thank you, Lama.
Yes, Francis from Comfort, I'm back.
Amazing. Thank you, Francis. Okay.
Moses from Tanzania is back.
This is Talon from Ethiopia.
Great, great, great. Okay. At this moment, can we take a couple minutes just from a couple of the facilitators in the breakout rooms? If you would like to share any key takeaways, any highlighted information that you think is important, and if you can, just remind us which indicator you were discussing in your room.
So, good afternoon, all. This is Sambayo from ANSA Foundation. I want to thank USAID for this opportunity. Very, very welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I was facilitating group one, Vahe, and I think it was, we began to talk about full cost recovery, but still the challenge for everyone was just getting connected, just finding their way to work with USAID.org, knowing what that is, how to register for it. And there was also discussion of how to access capacity strengthening that's focused on connection with USAID. So I think that was, and I wound up promising several times that MCLD could also help facilitate groups of organizations in each country do that. And two more facilitators are there, Gay and Steve and Ian.
Yes, thanks. I'd like to, shall I?
Go Gay.
I'll share that our breakout group, which also talked about ensuring full cost recovery, it was mentioned that even if there is a plan for cost recovery, there are so many changes that happen, especially in places affected by conflict, that the program needs to be agile and be able to change and not be static, so that what one agreed to in a budget a year ago or 6 months ago, if unforeseen problems arise, that there ought to be a way to address that. That's what our group mentioned in particular, 2 people. Thanks.
Yes, my group was group 4, and we were talking about the 50% budget with an international partner is Prime. And I shared co-hosting the group with Rosie, who can also come in after my few submissions. One of the things was that it is good for local partners to have an international lead person, based on the fact that there is experience to gain in the processes, and then some organizations at the local level are in the growing stages. So, and the 50% is fair enough to support active implementation and organizational growth. And then the other issue was how to support or include capacity building in the finances, in the budgeting, to support organizational growth, and maybe reduction of some of the criteria necessary to have some organizations benefit. Rosie, could you please share anything else?
I think you covered well what I heard as well. I will just note that my colleague Abdullah, who works in USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Affairs, highlighted that, that there are special considerations for a humanitarian policy. And again, our humanitarian funding often works through sub-awards as well to local organizations. But he highlighted that that USAID's Humanitarian Affairs Group has a new policy on localization that should be coming out within the coming weeks or months. And so we can maybe look forward to engaging with you on that as well. So thank you.
Fantastic. Very quickly, Steve, Shannon, I do see your hands are up. I want to check in with Sarah with MCLD to make sure we're ready for the second breakout room session.
Yeah, we're really tight on time, so I think we should go for it, like now.
Sounds good. So we'll spend another 10 minutes. Again, please select the breakout rooms. So Sarah will prompt everybody, but go ahead and pick a different indicator in the language you wish to discuss in. We hope that everybody get a chance to at least speak to 2 indicators today. And we'll spend about 10 minutes here, and then we'll return for closing. So Sarah, whenever you're ready to launch us into, or whenever you want to indicate that the breakout rooms are ready. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And let me know if you need any help.
Hello. I hope I'm in the right room this time.
Hi,
Sarah,
Gay. You're not in a room. Right
okay,
now, this is just the main room.
Okay, I'm supposed to be in breakout room 4. But I'm on my phone and I can't get there. Can you help me?
Yes, let me get you there. Let me get you there.
Hello.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to pass it to Ilana for any closing remarks.
Thank you. What rich discussion today, both in the question and answer period and also in the breakout rooms. Please give me one moment to pull up the right screen. All right. So I just want to thank everybody here. Again, just incredible discussion. This is really what it's all about, where the rubber meets the road, if you will. There was so much said and so much more to be said. We plan on synthesizing everyone's remarks into a short brief, which we will share with everyone here to continue the momentum around locally led agenda. We look forward to being invited to and to creating more opportunities to incorporate your voices and experiences into these policy discussions, as they're intended to put local civil society and community-based organizations at the center. Thank you again to MCLD, to USAID, and to everyone who participated today. We will be in touch. As I am saying, good day, good evening, and good night, I do encourage everyone to unmute themselves and say a farewell greeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you
very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you.
God bless you all for your love for humanity from Freetown, Sierra Leone. God bless you all.
Thank you.
All right, and on that note, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, madam.
Thank
Good day
you.
to you too.
Hey, bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
CLD, USAID, God bless you all.
Thank
See you
you.
around.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Many thanks
Many
to
thank yous.
our
Thank you. Thank you.
interpreters.
Yeah, bye for now.
Thank you, Sarah, for your
Bye.
Goodbye.
Sarah.